He's talking to Gentiles in Thessaloniki about Jewish customs, which is exactly what we are doing. We're talking to Gentiles about Jewish customs so that we can understand our Messiah, our Christ better. And I have to reinforce this. There's no way that I, or I don't think Jay would ever do it either, would want anyone who is a Gentile to think you need to convert to being a Jew. We don't. But what we do need to do is we need to understand it from that Jewish context, the historical. I mean, you said after the temple fell in 70 AD, this is to quote a term, this is all history. This is irrelevant because things were done differently then. So we got to get the historical, cultural context of when Jesus spoke, of when Paul wrote, and try and get that into our Gentile Greek thinking minds.
Let me not only applaud that, let me take it a step further. The Apostle Paul was born in Tarsus, which was a hotbed of Hellenization, Greek thinking, and the Greek style of doing things. And I've spent a lot of time doing that. I hope everybody listening is not, don't let your brain blur out on this, because it really does make a very important distinction. And I'm sure that you'll be talking about it a lot more if you already haven't in the past, in the future too. But even though he was born there and was raised in a Hellenized Greek thinking way, he was obviously Hebrew thinking and dedicated to it. Once under Gamaliel. Gamaliel was not Hellenized, and he was taught by Gamaliel. But more than that, Paul was a Pharisee. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that when he converted to Christ, when he met Jesus, when he met the Messiah on the road, he did not suddenly become something other than what he was, except that he was saved. Paul was a saved Pharisee, and his entire life he was a saved Pharisee. He never denied that, and occasionally he mentioned it. But the Pharisees came about 100 years before as a reaction against the Greek Hellenization of Jewish Hebrew doctrine and the Bible. And he was a protector of the Hebrew way of thinking. So when he's talking to the Thessalonians or anyone else, he is making very clear not a Hellenized way of looking at the Bible, but speaking in Hellenized terms, the way the Bible was originally meant to present the truth to people in the simplest ways. All he's doing is sort of being a translator to them. That's what we're seeing when we see the Apostle Paul. So good going there.
And when we talk about the Hellenization of the Jews in those days, that's such a picture of the church today. Anyway, I've got another regional thing with the Galilean wedding, and you spoke about this in the video that I watched, and I'm going to put a link to that with the podcast. But you talked about them painting the bride's hands so that she couldn't do any work. Yes. Now that seems to be just a Galilean thing.
It could have been regional. It could have been all over, but it's been around not just during the time of Jesus. It's been around for a very long time. We get these the indications from this from frescoes in tombs, in catacombs, where sometimes, not only do they paint pictures of death, they paint pictures of scenes of life that are, it's water-based paint into plaster. It lasts for thousands of years. This is what they find, for instance, when you get really vivid pictures from Egypt, or perhaps even from Herculaneum or Pompeii or something like that. They just last, and all the colors are there. And you can see bridal scenes where people, the women, had their hands all painted, but not only on the back, but on the front of their hands. The henna, it would have come from India or places like Pakistan or whatever, because Israel is a land bridge between Europe, Asia, Africa, and Arabia. And it's this tiny little strip of land. And they didn't like to ship things by boat because ships sunk. And they couldn't control the weather, so it was always risky to send things by boat. So Israel collects all the caravans, the spice roads, the silk roads, the Via Maris that goes right through Israel, the way of the sea, all the great trade routes of the world as far as Northern Europe, China, even as far out as Japan, going down to Africa and the southernmost parts of Africa or the tip of Arabia, all narrowed down through Israel, which means the bride could have come up with all kinds of interesting cloth for her bridal gown. And as far as, like the paint or the henna, that would be like a temporary tattoo, because they weren't supposed to tattoo themselves. The Jews would never have done that. So it's a wash off way of just decorating the bride. The makeup that she would have had for her eyes, even though her face would have been covered with a veil until it was removed at the wedding day, not the betrothal ceremony,
Yes.
but during the wedding day, that her eyes would have been beautifully painted. Where did they learn that? They came out of Egypt. And the Egyptians, even the men painted their eyes up. So there was nothing that was forbidden about such things. But they would paint the hands, the palms of the hands. And this is great because, the age of grace with the church and the grace of God that we're saved by, that the women, the bride, not only had her hands painted and her feet painted, but she had the palms of her hands painted because she wasn't supposed to do any work. She'd smear the paint. So everybody had to do it for her. She just had to sit there, look beautiful in her waiting gown, waiting for the bridegroom to come, and she wasn't supposed to do any work.